Yo, what's up? This is Ollie from Cryptopsy and Cattle Decapitation, and you are watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 296 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Oliver Pinard from Cryptopsy, Cal Decapitation, Akurian, Vengeful, probably a plethora of other bands. So, how are you doing today, Ollie?
Hey, what's up, dude? How are you? I'm good.
Doing pretty
Uh,
good. We kind of started like 2 minutes early. I got home from work, took a quick shower, and ready to interview.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Perfect
So,
timing.
hell yeah. So kind of the format is I want to talk about like your musical history and sort of do a speed run of your discography, but take you back to young Oliver Pinard. So kind of growing up in Montreal, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to slap at a bass?
Um, Before death metal, I would say Iron Maiden for sure. When I discovered Iron Maiden when I was, I don't know, 10 years old, 11. Uh, I was a big Steve Harris fan. He really capped my attention.
Them
So right
triplets.
away, oh yeah, totally. So right off the bat, I was like, oh, I want to be a bass player. And my older brother was already playing the guitar, so I was like, oh, so the makes sense because we can start a band together now. So that was the main reason I started to play was to play music with my brother, playing cover songs from Maiden, Metallica, Priest, you name it. And later on, I discovered death metal, and the thing becomes really serious.
Not That's great. So I was like doing my research on Metal Archives. I believe one of your first bands was called Under the Grave. Like I'm digging deep. Like nobody ever talks about
Correct.
this stuff.
You're the first one ever to mention that to me in an interview, so
Oh,
that's
really?
awesome, man. Yeah,
Fuck
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. All right, we're going way back. I was 16 years old back then, 17 years old. It was right after high school. I It was during the MySpace era. So I got a message from that band Under the Grave on MySpace, and they reached out to me and they asked if I want to try out for the band, and I did. So and I got the job, and we signed a record deal with an actual label. So I did my first professional album and start touring. I was 17 years old. It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
Oh yeah. And then I believe that was like you did that first record Until Death Takes Us All in 2008. So tell me about
Yeah.
that. Was that like your first time ever like playing on an album?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Actually, we recorded that album in 2007 with Jeff Fortin. He's he played guitar in a local band here called Anonymous. They are like pretty famous here, and that was I learned a lot to say the least because first time in the studio, first experience in the studio, and
Yeah.
I played with a shitty bass with dead strings. So it was a nightmare, but the album turned out okay, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And and then kind of I also know you also do some session work because I know in
Yeah.
2009 you handled some bass tracks on the Omnipresent Curse by Vengeful. Tell me about that.
Mm.
How'd you end up hooking up with those guys?
Actually, it wasn't a session. It was I was a full time member, and I'm still a full time member of that band. It's just at the moment the whole bass player was still around, so he laid down the bass tracks for the first half of the album, and I did the second half. And but for me, it was a big deal because these guys they were uh, like way older than me. I was 18 years old, and they were already like 30 ish, and they had like experience. They had so many great musicians who played in the band, like Alex Grind, the drummer from Despise Icon, was there. So for me, it was a big deal. So I like to say that this is my first real album because everything changed for me after that. Like I believe that I became a professional musician with Vengeful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then moving on to the self-titled Vengeful album. I thought that was a great album. It's just fucking punishing. So tell me about
Yeah.
making that.
Actually, it I'm not on that record. I was there when they start writing the album, but at the same moment I joined Neuraxis, so I was busy playing the bass and touring with Neuraxis. So Vengeful, they had a sub for me at the time. So
So
yeah, but
fucking Metal Archives lied.
do they mentioned that I play on the album?
Yeah, it
Do they?
said credits like you were on base.
Oh, well, I'll take the credit because I
Okay.
was no, no, but I was a member of the band, but I wasn't on the album because I was too busy touring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that same year, 2011, tell me about like making Asylon by Neuraxis. I love this album. Like nobody, like another album that nobody ever really talks about, or band for that
Yeah,
matter.
yeah. I'm so proud of this album. Neuraxis. I joined Neuraxis in 2009, and I was a big fan of the band, so it was almost a dream come true for me. And we did the album with Chris Donaldson, and that's how I met him actually. So we were working in his old studio in the garage, and right away me and Chris, we had like this bound, like this chemistry was there. So it was so much fun. And then the album turns out to be one of my favorite I ever did in my entire discography. And for the album, we toured with Sepultura, we toured with Deicide right after that. So
Wow.
it was cool. Yeah, and I was still young, man. I was 20 years old. So my first US tour, I was 20 years old touring with Sepultura, and I was not, because there's some venues that I was not allowed to get in because it was 21 and plus, and I was 20 years old, so they put X on my hands, and I had to wait in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So just
crazy
like
time, man.
had to wait just like to play, and then once you're done, you just got to get the
Ex-
fuck out.
exactly, and my bandmates, they had to tear down my equipment for me.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. And I bet you they're
yeah.
like, oh my fucking God.
Eh, And of course, back in the day, I had the massive bass rig, the 8x10 cabinet, the fridge. So I was like, sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it was around the same time, 2011, you actually joined up with Cryptopsy. So
Yeah.
how'd you end up joining the band?
That's a crazy story too, because like I said, me and Chris, we were already friends at that time. And right after the Neuraxis touring, it was kind of obvious that the band was like splitting up for personal reasons. And so I was looking for a band actually, and out of nowhere, I got a phone call from John Levasseur, the former guitar from Cryptopsy, and he called me out of nowhere, like at 8 a.m. on a weekday. I was like, "What is going on?" And he told me like, "Yeah, Chris Donaldson was like talking about you, and we are looking for a bass player right now. Would you love to try?" I was like, duh, of course. I mean, come on. I'm looking for a band right now, and Cryptopsy called me. What? Seriously? So the very same day, John Levasseur came to my place with his guitar, and we start jamming. And the next day, we went to Flo's at his house, and we jammed with the full band, and boom, got the job like that.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then of course going to your first record with the band, which is the self-titled. I love
yeah,
this album. So what was sort of like the
yeah.
thought process going into making this album, being that was like your first record with Cryptopsy?
Oh, the pressure was crazy to like to the roof because same as Neuraxis, I was a fan of Cryptopsy before joining the band. So for me, I was like, I had to step up and be the new bass player. And if that the old bass player Eric Langlois, he was one of my biggest inspiration. So I was like, I need to be the best as possible. And but pretty much, I would say 80% of the writing was done when I joined the band, but John was still working on the 2 Pound Torch, the first track on the album. And I remember when he played that song for me in my living room, I got scared and I was like, holy shit, what is going on? Like, I was like, I need to learn that and write a bass line on top of that. Wow, that was a huge, huge challenge. So yeah, but I'm pretty proud of it. Like I think we did a great job doing this, and also it was our first album independent,
Yeah.
so it was everything was new for me. Like being in that legendary band, being independent. But yeah, it was good. Good
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, and of course, like this being as this album was self-titled, because I remember asking like Christian and Matt about this, because usually a self-titled when a band does a self-titled album, it's always like their first album, but when it's like something like in the middle, I always feel like it's like a new start, and of course, like being like it was your first record with the
Yeah,
band. So was that sort of like the reason for it being self-titled?
maybe, but it was also because it was after the Unspoken King, and during that time, it wasn't really the best times for Cryptopsy. Let's put it that way. So having a new beginning, like with John being back in the band, me, the dynamic was totally different, and so the mentality was more like let's bring Cryptopsy back where it belongs. You know,
Yeah,
let's just play extreme music. Let's do some crazy stuff. So that's why it's called Cryptopsy Cryptopsy, because what
like
you
a
get in
return to
this album,
form.
it's a return to form. Exactly, correct.
Oh yeah. And then kind of talking more about some more session work you did I know in 2013 you did Dying Dogma by Hybrid Chaos. Tell me
Yeah.
about like that EP. Like how'd you end up playing bass on there?
But Frank, the drummer, is one of Flo student. So he's always been around the band. He's a friend. He's a friend of ours, and he's just started this new project with a guitar player. And he was like, "Would you like to play bass on it?" And that was the very first time someone asked me to do session work for them. So I took it as a challenge, and I had a lot of fun doing it. It's been a while since I heard that album, though, but
Yeah.
because it's very bizarre. It's the music. It's very strange. It's more a chaotic, dissonant. But it was fun. And then after that, I guess because of this album, I got a bunch of session work like offers and stuff. So it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Because I know in 2015 you ended up playing bass on Evolution of Deceit by Ending Tyranny. So
Yeah.
tell me about that.
Ah, that band. it's it might be the most technical stuff I ever played in my life. It's so demanding, and I did it with Chris Donaldson. Once again, I did pretty much all the work I did was with Chris Donaldson, except the cattle decap stuff. But yeah, we did the album, and I remember after the session, I was exhausted. I was like, I think I'm done with tech death because it was too much. But man, I'm still here, so
Yeah.
I guess I did something good.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
then
god, it hurt. That session was so extreme, man, because there's like 10,000 riffs on this record. Like it's insane.
yeah, it's
It's really
fucking
crazy.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course that same year you joined up with the band Solium Fatalis and
Yeah.
you did the
I,
Undying Season, which is of course you and of course Flo. So how did you end up being part of that project?
but I actually it's a session work. It was just a session work. Me and Flo never joined the band. It was a friend of ours, Jim Gregory, and yeah, he hired us to play on his album. And but I love it. Yes, I love this album. It's very it's way different than Cryptopsy and Ending Tyranny. So for me, it was refreshing to play something more, in the pocket, more groovy, more melodic, instead of being just like crazy technical all the time.
Yeah. And then kind of going
Yeah.
back into Cryptopsy 2015, you dropped the Book of Suffering Tomb 1 EP. I love this. So how did the idea to come to be to sort of make a part one and then eventually you'll do a part two kind of EP of this?
I don't remember exactly um, if it was like our first initial plan to do like a series of EP, because at first the Book of Suffering, if I remember correctly, the title come from Lord Worm. Lord Worm had this idea of making a Book of Suffering for Cryptopsy at some point. So in 2015, when John left the band, we decided to stay as a four-piece. So it was me and Donaldson, Matt, and Flo. It was like, okay, so that's us. Let's just do the craziest thing we can. And we were not sure at first because it's always stressful to have a new songwriter in the band. Because Donaldson, he stepped up. At that time, Donaldson stepped up and he became the main songwriter. Man, he nailed it, man. He's so good. The first song he wrote was Detritus, the opening track, and right away we knew, like, okay, we have something right here. Yeah, we have something right here. And we were still independent at the time, and I remember we were like, okay, if you want to stay independent, we still need to keep our feet like in the game, in the business game, you know. So that's why we worked with Jason Sukoff to mix the album, the EP. I mean, just because to keep the name, you know, circulating and have people talking about it. And I guess it worked because right after that, we got an offer to tour with Cannibal Corpse. So our first tour for the Book of Suffering was with Cannibal Corpse 2016.
Oh yeah, and I was at that show.
Obituary.
You did that. It was the opening show was actually at the Old Masquerade in Atlanta, Georgia. I was there.
Yes, that was the first show of the tour. Exactly.
Yeah, and I remember it was like during like I think it was like you guys' set, like Corpse Grinder actually came over and hung by the merch, and I got a photo with him.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, so that was like my first time. It was my first time seeing, of course, Cryptopsy, Cattle, and Obituary, and Abysmal Dawn as well.
Oh, yeah, nice. I missed the Old Masquerade. I don't know about you, but
I definitely do because like you definitely remember at like the Old Masquerade, like how bands would like load in their shit in heaven. They would have like this makeshift elevator that would come down. And people would load your shit up and then it just like go up. And I remember like heaven, like people were always worried about like the floor being kind of like rickety. It would like cave in and shit.
Oh yeah, I missed that. And there was also another venue downstairs, right?
Yeah, there was the Hell Stage.
Okay, the Hell Stage at Heaven was the big one on top, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, I didn't know they called it Heaven and Hell.
And they also have a third stage, Purgatory, which is a little bit more smaller. I remember, of course, seeing Cattle Decap there for the first time in 2015 before you joined the band.
Oh shit! Okay, so they had this concept of Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory before the new location. I didn't know that.
And then of course they
just the Masquerade.
Yeah, and of course now they added like a fourth stage called Altar.
Okay, really?
Yeah, which is another kind of smaller stage, kind of similar to Purgatory, and they also now sell food there, so I can get like burgers and fries and shit.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, and then kind of going back on topic, because in 2017 you also did like a little EP with Vengel, TLA 2017, which is basically a re-recorded of a medley of from the first demo, Tragedy Lies Ahead. So how did the idea come to be to sort of like make a medley of that?
It's just we took the best part of, because there's 3 songs on that EP, and we're like, let's just do a solid 8-9 minutes of just the best riffs of this EP, and that's it. But the cool thing about this EP, we did it with Luke Lemay from Gorguts. That was cool, man. That was a great experience to be able to record bass next to Luke, having Luke producing as well. So, and during the time, that moment, it was before Gorguts released Pleiades Dust. And I remember after a session, he was like, hey, do you want to listen to the new Gorguts? I was like, oh, yeah. So we heard the new Gorguts at Luke Lemay's place after a 12 hours bass recording session. That was great.
Oh, yeah. And then 2018, you went back in the studio with Cryptopsy and you did the Tomb 2. I thought it was a great sequel to Tomb 1. So tell me about like making that. Did you want to try to like make it like sound even more better than Tomb 1?
But this time around, we knew that Chris is gonna handle everything, like the mixing, the mastering. Because for the Tomb 1, we went with Jason Sukoff, and he did an amazing job. But to be honest, I don't really remember the writing session that much. It just came out naturally like that. In my opinion, this one is a bit more extreme. It's more chaotic. We're getting closer to Whisper Supremacy, like in term of extremeness. Because the book Tone of Suffering, the first one was more catchy, more melodic, more groovy, and the second one, in my opinion, is way more in your face, way more brutal.
Yeah.
But together, man, I think they blend perfectly because there's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and of course you mentioned that you've had like Christian like a handle like producing and mixing and mastering.
Mm-hmm.
So how different of it is like having like somebody in the band that actually knows like the band to handle all that versus like working with like an outside producer and mixer.
For Cryptopsy, man, I will say we should always work with Chris Donaldson because he's the mastermind. You know exactly how things should sound or not sound. He's not only a great engineer. He's an amazing producer because he's a musician. He have like an awesome, like, he hears stuff that I will have never thought of. Thought about it. So it's just different. It also makes everything way like fast. Like it's faster to work this way also because we were doing the tracking and he makes already like right away. So boom, there we go. We don't have to send files to someone else and then wait for him to send them back and blah blah blah. No, it's super efficient.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then of course 2018 you ended up joining up with Cal Decapitation. So how'd you get to know like Travis and Josh and everybody?
yeah, that's a great story. So in 2013, Cryptopsy, we toured Europe for the self-titled album, and we added Cattle Decap as direct support, and they were touring for Monolith of Humanity at that moment. So we share a bus together, so we became friends basically. And the same year, Cattle, they were playing the Summer Slaughter, and the old bass player, for a reason, he couldn't make it to all the Canadian days. He couldn't make it. So Travis called me and he asked me if I wanted to just step in for these shows. It's like, yeah, let's go. So we did, and honestly, it was awesome. Everything was so natural. The chemistry on stage with them, because at the time it was the only one guitar, only Josh. So the four of us, we were already like that. And I remember I was like, damn, I wish I could play in that band. That was in
you got what you asked for.
That was in 2013, man. And yeah, I remember in 2018, I was working at my old job, and I just looked at Facebook and I saw that the old bass player quit, and I was like, no way. So I was like, I told to my coworker, I was like, I'm just gonna do a phone call. I'll be right back. So I went outside and I called Travis right away. And I think he said something like, dude, I was about to call you. I'm like, whoa, shit. Yeah. So that's it. No audition, nothing.
Yeah.
I'm in the band. There you go.
Yeah. But then going to 2019, you dropped Death Atlas, which is probably one of the best Cal Decapitation records to date. So what was that like, making this was like your first record with the band?
Oh man, I mean, I'm so proud to be part of it, man, because it's a huge album, and it's so different also from pretty much everything I did before, because it's the songwriting from Cattle. Even though it's an extreme metal band, I think it's so different from Cryptopsy or Neuraxis or Vengeful. So I think I learned a lot, like, about what to play and what not to play in the studio. Like, yeah, need to respect the fact that there's a lot of vocals in Cattle, so sometimes the instruments needs to step back to have the vocals shine more, and it's more about the songwriting, writing catchy songs, but in the extreme metal concept. And I think we nailed it on this one, because Bring Back the Plague was hard. it's still today. It's like our anthem. People sing along to that song live. It's
Yeah. It almost
crazy,
feels
man.
like you almost kind of like predicted the future with the whole like
Yeah.
pandemic that happened. And
Hey, we were supposed to have way more stuff, man. We did some Bring Back the Plague 2020 t-shirt and
yeah,
bumper stickers
I
and stuff
remember
like
that.
that, And at some point we were like, oh shit, because the coronavirus, the COVID was like it's getting there. So like, oh shit, what
Yeah.
what did we just do? Yeah,
Yeah, and I remember, of course, this coming out on Black Friday, and you literally on the
yeah,
same day you
yeah.
in Atlanta the album release
Was
show,
it?
which was amazing.
Uh, was it? Oh yeah, the show with the Vitriol, Atheist.
Yeah,
Was that tour?
yes, yeah, it was. I think I forget who
Nice.
else played. I think Full of Hell was supposed to be on there, but they had like van issues and stuff, so you got the ATL boys and Withered play.
That's right. They had like a van problem, or they get their gear stolen or something. Ah, I forget about that. Shit. It seems like it's been 20 years, man.
Yeah, but even though it's only been like
Because
half a decade.
I know it's just because of the pandemic, the time is all weird.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I know like during the whole pandemic, I know it definitely kind of like fucked up like the whole music industry and stuff. So, and a lot of bands and musicians were like struggled during that time. I guess for like you personally, Lee, how did you manage to cope with that? And especially because I know you also did a little other session stuff. So did like the pandemic at all sort of like influence like the way you sort of like play it, or do you try to keep that whole thing completely separate?
Um, at first, I mean, because at first we didn't know if it was that serious. So I was like, the first couple of weeks I took it like almost as vacation. I was like, I'm gonna stay home and chill for a moment. But then later on, we find out it's gonna take way more time than we thought. So I was like, I need to do something. So I start doing playthrough videos for my YouTube channel. So I learned off. I learned. I tried to learn how to make videos with Adobe Premiere and how to produce myself with Pro Tools and stuff. So that's pretty much all I did was to play bass by myself. It was pretty depressing because Cryptopsy, we all live like in different area in Quebec, and Cattle, they are in San Diego. So it was kind of hard not to play music with other people. I was always playing by myself, and it was frustrating at some point. But yeah,
Yeah.
but still,
Because I know
I learned
no.
how to do some stuff. And
Yeah, because I know in 2020 you did another Vengeful EP,
that's another
TOC, which is actually
TOC 2020. Yeah, that's
yeah, which
another re-recording of the Omnipresent Curse
yeah.
album because
So
that was the 10-year anniversary.
yeah, so how the idea to come to be to sort of like re-record that some songs from that first EP?
Oh, it was just to celebrate the album, to give justice to the songs, and because we're gonna do that for pretty much every record we had. We already talk about. I mean, I cannot say much, but we are talking about recording some older material again, just just to have a more stuff. It's mostly for us, to be honest with you. Vengeful, it's like our baby. It's our artistic project that we do for us. And if people want to jump in and enjoy the project with us, cool. But in the first place, it's mostly for us. So
Yeah,
to keep us satisfied. And yeah,
yeah. And then of course that same year you ended up playing releasing the first Acurian album, Come Forth to
yeah.
Me. So tell me about like that album and that project, how'd that come to be?
That project was in the work for since the end of the Raxus. So since 2011, we me and Rob, the guitar player, we had material for a new Neuraxis stuff. And the Neuraxis we kind of split up. So we're like, hey, so what are we doing with these songs? And Rob, the guitar player, told me, oh, actually, I'm good friends with Mike DiSalvo. from the previous Cryptopsy singer, and he was like, let's see if he's down to do something, to do a new project or whatever. So, and he was super interested. So, like, let's go. So we right away we had this new band. It was me, Rob, Mighty Salvo, and the old Neuraxis drummer. He joined the band as well. So it was a Neuraxis Cryptopsy project in a way. It was
Yeah.
fun. And on the album, man, we have Lord Worm also doing vocals. So we keep it in the family, man.
Yeah.
It's,
And of course, you play with so many bands, going from Cal Decap to Cryptopsy, See Vengeful, and of course Akurian. So, how different of a mind frame is it with all the bands? Do you have to like be in a certain headspace depending on the
oh yeah,
project, or do you have are you allowed to like bring like your own kind of like style into whatever bands that you play with?
Oh no, I definitely need to be in the right mindset. Or like right now, I'm getting ready for the Cryptopsy tour with Carnifex. So right now, my mind is Cryptopsy only.
Yeah.
It's hard to focus on anything else. I need to focus only on the what we're about to do, like our 45 minutes of Cryptopsy, because it's very demanding. It's I mean, maybe it's possible for some musician to jump from a project to another like that, but I need to focus and do one at a time. Otherwise, it doesn't work, because I consider all of them very differently. Even though for some people it's only death metal, but for me it's different. It's like Acurian is more like a experimental project, because we tried a lot of new stuff. Like I play fretless bass with distortion.
Wow.
I mean, why not? I mean, I was like, why? I want to try this. It's gonna be a new thing. It's gonna Cryptopsy. It's more like a slappy, but I mean, bass wise, I'm talking about. The playing is totally different from every band. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then kind of going into 2021, I want to talk about The Beginning by Obvert. I think
Oh
that's a
yeah,
fucking sick EP. Tell me about like making
yeah.
that.
I've been friends with Phil for years, man, and he got in the car accident. I don't know if you heard that story, but he got in the car accident, and uh, he was told by a doctor that he couldn't play guitar anymore, so he had to relearn how to play, but lefty. So he had to change his entire like way of playing. Like it's and the guy is very motivated, man. He wrote an album and he was like, "Would you like to play bass?" I was like, "Fuck yeah!" I mean, it's an honor for me to have done this, because it's a it's the dedication. That's a big dedication, man. The guy, man, was told that he couldn't play guitar anymore, and he was like, "You know what? Fuck it," and he did.
Yeah.
And he's still around today. So good for him, and I'm super proud of him.
Hell yeah. Anyway, we're almost done. Last year, you dropped two of my favorite albums of last year. First off, I want to talk about Terrasite by Terrasite, one of my favorite albums from
Yeah.
last year, and of course, it's been out now. So, how has like the overall sort of like album cycle been like for Terrasite?
The touring cycle, or
The just or
studio,
pretty much like
everything.
the whole album cycle.
Okay. But man, because after the pandemic, our touring cycle, but our touring cycle for Death Atlas was cut short because of the pandemic. So we're like, okay, what are we doing? Are we gonna resume our tour in 2022 with Death Atlas? So we're like, no, we need a new album. But at the same time, I felt like and all of us, we felt like the pressure was on, because Death Atlas for us was right there. So it was almost like impossible to think that we can top this album, and apparently we did, and we can't we cannot be more proud, I guess.
Yeah,
It's a massive album. The reaction is overwhelming. I guess. I mean, it's crazy. I feel like since this album is out, the cattle is getting bigger and bigger every day, man.
totally.
It's insane.
And musically, would you wanted to also continue in the same vein as Death Atlas, or did you wanted to try something different that Cattle Decap hasn't done before?
It's hard to tell, man. We just did an album without thinking, like without looking back. I mean, we were like, oh, we need to be better than that Atlas, or we need to do this or this. We, it was everything came naturally. We just wrote a bunch of riffs, put all the puzzle together, and in the studio, all the magic happened. And obviously, when you have someone like Travis Ryan in your band, it helps a lot because he's a genius. I think with the concept, the lyrics, the vision he had, like the closing tracks, just another body. To be honest with you, when we were in the studio, it was hard to tell that this song was going to be a epic closer because it was just that's the last song we wrote also for the album. So it was like I feel like it was not as ready as the other song when we entered in the studio, but turned out to be an amazing epic 12-minute long song.
Yeah, and
I
being
love that. I love that.
yeah, being as it has been a year since Terracite, have you all started working on the next Cattle Decap album? Like, what's the status with that?
It's coming. we actually we're working on it. We are talking about getting together and start working for the next one, but it's nothing. It's nothing said. It's set in stone right now.
All right.
Just we're speculation.
And then of course and of course lastly, your last thing I want to talk about is As Gomorrah Burns, probably in my opinion one of the best comeback albums of yet, because there was a long gap between the self-titled Cryptopsy, but even though you had like the two EPs in between. But tell me about like the making of this album and how has like the reception been now that it's been out for a while.
It's unbelievable, man. But first of all, we start working on this album in March 2020, so right before the pandemic hit, and we rent a shack in the wood, like a cabin in the woods, just focus on the album. And out of then the pandemic happened, everything was closing down, and we were like just isolating in the woods, like, so what's going on, man? So I guess in a way you can feel that weird vibe on the record because all the riffs are, in my opinion, really bizarre. We were just like joking, oh, let's try this, and stupid riffs that we give name to our riffs, like the rabbit riffs, oh the grandfather riff, oh the grandmother riff, we give silly names to our stuff. But it turns out to be a crazy album, and when it came out last year, man, we couldn't be more happy with the response, man, because it's like you said, it's a comeback.
Yeah,
it was not supposed to be a comeback album. It was supposed to be just an album, but it felt like it's a comeback album. It's crazy. We just did a tour with Dead to All, and every time we played the new stuff, the crowd they fucking go crazy. So I'm like, okay, because they normally go crazy for the non-survival stuff, and that's it. And now they do for the new stuff as well. So it's like, okay, so we're doing something good, I guess.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
And did you also musically wanted to pick up after the self-titled or the two EPs, or being as it has been a long gap between self-titled and As Gomorrah Burns, it's almost like a fresh new start for Cryptopsy in a way.
Yeah. I think because we were talking about doing a third EP, the Book of Suffering, Tome 3, and but the Nuclear Blast, they wanted an album, so that's why we scrapped the idea. So like, let's give them a full album. It's gonna be its own thing, As Gomorrah Burn. So maybe one day there will be a Tome 3. We don't know, but the plan was to make something unique and different from the two EPs, something on its own. And yeah, we're super proud. We won a Juno Award for it.
Yeah, which congrats, by the way.
Thank you. It's crazy, man. Like an extreme metal band winning an award for that, for me, doesn't make any sense. But wow, it's amazing.
Yeah. And then kind of want to switch topics. I also want to talk about like your bass playing because I know you've heard your fair share of bass player jokes and seen all the memes and stuff. But I
Yeah,
love how you don't gravitate towards flashy bass playing, but instead I feel like you find ways to sort of link what the guitars are doing with the melody
yeah.
and what the drums are doing with the rhythm, but in a very creative sense. So for you, being with, of course, with Cattle or Cryptopsy or any of your other projects, what's like your approach to playing bass?
I just want to bring something interesting. I want to serve the song first. That's the first thing, man. I want a good song. Like, if the songs require like something simple on bass, let's go. I'm gonna go for it, you know. But uh, it's like I said, for all my project, it's different. For Cryptopsy, obviously, I can do more crazy stuff. This is where I do my Primus popping and slapping stuff that I really like. In Cattle, it's not so much. Cattle, it's more a lot of pickings with distortions, but I want to bring my color. Actually, it's almost like I want my own identity as a bass player because when I start playing, I felt like in the metal world, there's a few really cool bass player, but in general, the bass it's always in the back. It's always like the drummer and the guitar and the vocals. But like, dude, the bass can do something really cool. You know, a bass player can be cool. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
totally.
So that was a little bit not my goal, but I always wanted people to see the bass the way I see it. Like, and now with Cryptopsy, it's only one guitar, so the bass it's almost the second guitar in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just
And the final question I wanted to ask you is talking about like your bass gear and setup because I remember watching your Dave Otera's like video and I just think you have a
yeah.
really sick setup. So since then, has your bass setup changed at all, whether it be with like recording or live, or it's still pretty much the same?
It's pretty much the same. I tweaked the pedal a little bit, but overall it's the same Spectre bass. Now for my live rig, I use the Quad Cortex from a Neural DSP. So instead of bringing a pedal board, I just have this one unit. It's easy. It's light. It's perfect. I can bring it as a carry-on when we travel overseas. So it's amazing. And I found the gear that I like years ago, like the Spectre bass. I'm gonna be a Spectre guy for life. That is for sure. Like I'm gonna carry these instruments with me till the end. I mean, right now I'm not looking for new gear. I feel like I found my thing, and I love it. I
Yeah.
really love it.
And so kind of like in the end to sort of wrap things up, what's next for your bands? Because I know you mentioned like Cryptopsy is going to do a tour with our boys and Carnifex. Just anything else
Yeah.
with any of your bands that you can plug if you're allowed to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Cryptopsy, we're gonna re-release the self-title and the two tones on vinyl with Season of Mist. So, because those albums were uh, released independent back in the day. So for the first time, it will be on the Season of Mist on their web store. Use the vinyl, I guess CD. I'm not sure, but so finally, it's gonna be available physic copy. Um, Cryptopsy also we got a tour with Carnifex next month. We're gonna do a full US, full Canadian tour. Still for us touring for us Gomorrah Burns. So if you want to hear new tracks that we haven't played from that album, here we go. Is your chance. And also Cattle, we are gonna, I guess, wrap our Terrazite touring cycle next year and start focus writing on the writing as well for an album, maybe a year or two, something like that. But nothing official. So yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, Ollie, for this conversation. It's just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out.
Come to the show. Come say hi. We always hanging out at the merch. So come see us. We want to meet you all.
Oh yeah. So everybody, Ollie Pinard from Cattle Decapitation and Cryptopsy. We'll see you next time.